Happy Friday! Today on CityCast Las Vegas, we're helping you make sense of this week's news as you head into the weekend. First up, Henderson Animal Services is saving more animals than the rest of the industry. So what can we learn from their approach? Plus, NV Energy customers are reaching a boiling point, and they showed up to prove it. And another Tony Hsieh property just changed hands. We're wondering if that's a good sign for downtown. Then in our members-only bonus segment, we've got some insider tips for any new residents or anyone thinking about moving to Las Vegas. Yvette Fernandez, the regional reporter in the Mountain West News Bureau for Nevada Public Radio, and our executive producer, Layla Muhammad, join me to break it all down. It's Friday, June 5th. I'm Jesse Merrick, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. All right, Yvette, Layla, before we get going, since we are talking about animals, we do have to figure this out first and foremost for our listeners at home. Are you dog people or cat people? I feel like this is a big deal.
Dog.
Yes.
Oh, that's a hard one. I started out as a dog person, got a cat for ease, and now I feel like I have to solidly say I'm probably a cat person.
Oh, man. No offense to our creative producer, Jacob Solis, but I am also a dog person, not a big cat guy. You know, can't do it. But hey, at least we got a nice split here in the chat today. So let's kind of dive into it, I guess, from that lens. Layla, we'll start with you, since you technically have had both, right? Mm-hmm. What's going on with the Henderson Animal Protection Services? It seems like things are trending in the right direction for them.
Yeah, so Henderson's Animal Protection Services is sharing some genuinely good news this week. They've hit a 91% live release rate so far in fiscal year 2026. That means that 91% of animals that come through the doors leave alive, whether through adoption, foster, or being reunited with families. That's above the industry benchmark and a meaningful jump from 87% in 2024 and 84% in 2025. So far this year, the shelter has logged 1,829 adoptions, reunited 522 pets with their owners, and saved 2,664 animals total, which are great stats. Occupancy, which hit 68% in early 2025, dropped to 53% and held there through the second and third quarters last year. This matters because it stands in contrast to what's been happening across the valley. Obviously, the Animal Foundation, which is a big publicly funded animal shelter serving all of Clark County, that's from Mawapa to Laughlin, has been at or over capacity most days throughout 2025, caring for 800 to 900 animals on any given day. Henderson's numbers suggest that a smaller, more focused operation with intentional investment can move the needle. The city has been pouring resources into this. A $7 million renovation plan was announced last July, and a formal shelter diversion partnership with Nevada SPCA is coming this summer to help keep pets with their families before even reaching the shelter. So Henderson appears to be doing something right.
Okay. So, I mean, that's great news. Yvette, I mean, obviously, as someone who is also an animal lover as well, this is something that's really good for the valley, right? I mean, less crowded shelters. I mean, that seems like a massive step forward for us.
Yeah, less crowded shelters are always going to be important, especially for, the animals that need rescuing, that need homes. But I think another aspect of it is what would be good to allocate funds toward is education. And I see education on a couple of different levels. Education from these shelters, because for some reason we're seeing a lot of animal abuse and neglect cases. Mm-hmm. And I think people just need to understand more how to care for animals. That's one aspect of it. I think another part can be with policy too. Yeah. Because, for example, see, people are struggling to pay their bills. And so maybe they have to move to an apartment. Not all apartment complexes are going to welcome animals. Mm-hmm. And the unfortunate part about it is that you kind of get hit in this spiral double whammy thing with also insurance. Insurances are regarding animals are based on breed. And I think it's an unfair way of doing that. It's kind of racial profiling for dogs in a way. In a way, and it really shouldn't be that way. It really should be about behavior.
Yeah, pet rent is also a thing too. I mean, it all just continuously adds up, and it's wild where it just makes owning a pet too expensive for everyone. It's like having a second kid, which it technically is, but even, times a million in terms of what you're paying for this thing.
Right. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So anything that can be done to just sort of make it easier for people to care for pets. I mean, pets depend on us as people, for their livelihood, just the same way that we depend on them too for a big portion of our happiness.
Yeah, on the topic of policy changes, and when we tackle the shelters, a lot of advocates say we're treating the symptom and not the problem. So education, I agree, Yvette, is really important for the community. But I will say something that the Henderson Animal Protection Services did last year was they moved services from the Henderson Police Department to community development and services. So I think that also enabled them to allocate more funds and resources, and they didn't have to compete with issues at the police department. So I think a different allocation and resources could help the animal foundation's overcrowding as well. And we're seeing them open some satellite locations for the Animal Foundation. So hopefully in the coming year, their shelter gets some help.
Yeah,
Right.
we've seen over like at the Silver Bowl, the old Sam Boyd Stadium, the county kind of converted that or is in the process of converting that into an animal shelter too, which is great, and like spreading the resources out. So one, it makes it easier for people to go to these places because they're spread around the valley, but also, again, avoiding the overcrowding where when you go in there looking for a pet, like if there's too many of them, it looks like they're in a bad situation, that could change the way you view the actual animal itself. And to your guys' point of education and different things like that, around the holidays too is something that is always an issue more broadly in just this industry as a whole. Is there something particular shelters can do around the holidays to help stop from people? Because people feel the stress of the holidays in general. And that's, I would imagine, when a lot of the numbers go up is like, well, we can barely afford to give, food on the table or give people gifts within our family, can't afford a pet. So how do we go about maybe taking the stress off of pet owners around the holidays as well?
I think that's a big part of it, the education component that we were talking about, because, unfortunately, many people, they see some cute puppy and they want to give that cute puppy as a pet, as a gift, but it doesn't come with the education of what is needed to care for that animal and the responsibilities that, come with taking care of an animal. I mean, just that alone could be very helpful for people so they have a more realistic picture of what it does take. You don't just bring home this little cute thing. You got to feed it, you got to walk it, you got to give it, vaccines, whatever, all of the stuff that needs to take place. And I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, and I think also knowing that if you do get to the point where you feel like you need to surrender your animal, you can call a diversion program first, and they can help you try to keep that animal. Like the Nevada SPCA, shelters will recommend to call first, and maybe they can connect you with a diversion program, or maybe you can find a diversion program to try to keep your animal before going to the shelter and surrendering it.
Right.
Yeah, they also have services too that'll help, cover, food costs and medical costs, things like that. That's again, we're pointing to your guys' mention of education, like having people realize that there are resources before you actually have to hand your pet over. I think that would be a game changer. And speaking of things that aren't affordable, utility companies are one thing in particular that people are really feeling the heat on here. So Yvette, obviously it sounds like folks are kind of tired of paying so much for utilities, and it hit home here in Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah, it just came up recently. I mean, consumers are feeling the effects of rising costs from everything from grocery prices to auto insurance rates.
Yeah.
And of course, utility bills are increasing also. And just to put that in perspective, according to the Consumer Price Index, electricity prices rose over 5% between 2024 and 2025.
Wow.
And that's higher than the overall 3% increase in inflation. Now, this week, advocates protested outside of the Edison Electric Institute's annual summit that was held in Las Vegas, where several utility companies were in attendance. Now, these consumer advocates essentially said utility companies are seeing record profits, Executives are earning multi-million-dollar compensation packages. Meanwhile, consumers are struggling to keep cool and safe, of course, in the summer. So recently, NV Energy proposed changing the rate structure with including, among other things, daily demand charges. Now, this type
not popular.
this type of structural charge, just to explain, means that customers are going to be charged based on their highest 15 minutes of energy use each day. Of course, advocates are saying this is going to increase the price of energy for consumers, and Nevada Energy actually says consumers will experience lower rates, but we'll find out soon as it's expected to take effect early next year. And just before we started this conversation, I received a notification saying that these advocates are likely going to have another rally just to call attention to these NV Energy structure and to ask for a cancellation of the daily demand charge structure.
Yeah, it seems like that's been really a hot button issue in terms of the daily demand, charge and everything like that. Layla, do you think that's kind of been what's like pushed things over the edge for people, where it's just like, God, like another increasing fee here?
Yeah, I definitely think it has hurt the relationship between NV Energy and community members. At that summit, advocates interrupted the NV Energy CEO's speech, saying cancel the daily demand charge. To Nevada NV Energy's point, they did delay the implementation of this to let consumers better understand what the daily demand charge is. And it is very confusing how it interacts with solar customers. There's a lot there to understand.
Definitely.
But it's, I don't think customers are going to like it no matter how much time they have to learn about it.
Yeah.
Well, and not only that, but I mean, to your point about solar energy, a lot of people are saying it's a way for the company to recoup the money they would have gotten from people who did invest. They tried to do the right thing, maybe, they wanted to be environmentally conscious, or they wanted to, reduce their costs. And so they invested in a solar system. But that means all that money, if your bill would have been $500, now you pay the connection fee, $20, let's say. It's a huge difference. So now they want to try to recoup that from these solar customers who invested in these kinds of systems. So there's a lot of things that, it led to legal challenges, of course, and we'll probably continue to see some of these legal challenges as people do struggle to pay for their utility bills. I spoke with the people with the LAHEAP program. I don't know if you know about this, called the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program. And so they recently distributed, the funding for the summer to all the states. And so in addition to helping people to pay their utility bills, it's also intended to prevent utility shutoffs for people who get behind on their utility bills. And, the organization is saying they're expecting utility bills this summer to go up by 8%. And climate scientists are expecting this to be among the hottest summers ever. So it's going to be very challenging for consumers, especially in places like this.
Yeah, it's one of those deals too, where like speaking of just like rising temperatures and everything, you do think, to your point, of solar, and obviously on the residential level there, people investing in it probably feeling blindsided, but also too, we've got some of the best solar resources in the entire country. Why are we not seeing the benefit of that with local customers and stuff?
Right. And unfortunately, a lot of the many, many solar projects that were scheduled to start here have been quashed or have been paused, and because of new administration decisions to not fund them, not support them.
Yeah, but I'm also seeing that NV Energy is at or nearing 47% renewable energy use, and that a lot of the rise in costs for consumers is coming from infrastructure demands for things like data centers and building out new infrastructure for renewable energy. So I think that's also frustrating for consumers, is absorbing the cost of infrastructure. Yeah.
Yeah. Why the hell are we paying for that? Again, like that's something where, again, it's like the haves and the have-nots battling of like, why are we paying for your guys' nice things? That's the frustrating part.
Kind of going back to the topic that we were talking about before, even with animals, part of it is just how do we do this? Because we're talking about growth. We're talking about the need to move into, the future and support, technology, et cetera. How do we do that in a way that is equitable for all people? Not just the very wealthy. There's a whole discussion about, just allowing people to have access to broadband. And a lot of it is because of the cost of that infrastructure. So doing that in such a way where it allows everybody to have access, because that goes into so many things. It gets into education, healthcare access, et cetera, so many other things. So if we just do it with the kind of policies that allow for equitability, I think that can make a difference.
I think that's something, the thing that pops in my head too, though, is like, okay, is this just an issue of, for-profit private utility companies? Like, do they need to be something that are not for-profit so that it doesn't take advantage of people? Is that the real solution? Like, we talk about solving the root of the problem. Is that where the root of the problem lies?
Prioritization, exactly. Like, how do we do it in a way that is appropriate for everybody to be able to have that? And it's not just about profit. Yeah. It's also about being concerned about equity. It's about being concerned about the environment. It's about how do we, support growth for the future with new technology, et cetera. All of those have to be in balance. It can't be so disproportionate.
Yeah, this is definitely something that Nevada voters are interested in, which is electricity deregulation. We voted for it in 2016 at 72%, and NV Energy spent $63 million to defeat it in 2018. So I wonder if that will come back to the legislature, especially with all of these calls for the demand charge to not go into effect, but we'll see in the future.
Look, when they're spending $63 million to defeat it, that tells you just how much money they are actually making, which is
There's
just
a
insane.
Reason.
Yeah. Let's have a little more fun now and talk about the growth of downtown, all right? The Downtowner Hotel, which is that retro mid-century boutique property on the corner of 8th and Ogden, it's just a block away from Fremont. It just sold for about $10 million, and it's the latest piece of Tony Hsieh's downtown Las Vegas properties to actually find new ownership. The new owner is Las Vegas real estate investor Michael Pora, who says he's got big plans for the property. He said he wants to add affordable spa and salon services, so we're hitting the affordable angle here. You got to love that. He also wants to throw in more live music, a revamped pool and bar, and more seating around the property's already popular mini golf course. And here, with this particular property, he also said that he actually bought up a bunch of the parcels of the land around it as a part of the deal. For right now, some of them are parking lots and things like that. He says he does plan eventually to expand the hotel's room count. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does that while also kind of balancing the Palm Springs, Old Vegas vibe that's kind of hard to find still around here in the Valley. And he's saying he's going to keep the history that does come along with that. So I love that because we've seen it so much in the news lately of them tearing down these old hotels because of, issues with the unhoused and everything like that. So I like that someone's buying something that, yes, was already recently remodeled, but reinvesting and kind of keeping that old school Las Vegas vibe to it. And that makes me wonder about that kind of tug of war between like tearing down and rebuilding or revitalizing. Is this the type of stuff that downtown needs, the revitalization effort versus the just tear down and rebuild anew?
I think character-driven boutique properties is what downtown needs.
Yeah.
And it really sets it apart. Yeah, it fits the vibe. It fits the history of the neighborhood. It's what locals and tourists are attracted to in cities like Nashville and Detroit, who focused on revitalizing their downtown neighborhoods. And it also sets downtown apart from the Strip. Yeah. It's not like a corporate, big building neighborhood. It's, again, character-driven boutique properties that have character and personality and history.
I agree with that. I think that there's so many places that, have become sort of, people who come here and visit, they always talk about the cookie cutter look of Las Vegas, and that is a part of it. That's one of the things that is attractive to that area. And I don't really understand why we're always I mean, it's cool to see an implosion,
They are
you know,
young.
but why do we always have to blow things up? Why can't we, use what's there and build on that character? I mean, that's what the Mob Museum is so cool, because it has that relativeness that you could see, and you can sort of touch and feel, and you have that experience, and you get those kind of qualities, and there's something to it, as opposed to just, let's put up another generic building that has the same old, and it's not really that much.
Or tear it down, because Fremont looks so empty without some of those hotels there now, or motels there now, because they just tore it all down, and now there's just like a bunch of empty dirt lots on Fremont.
Yeah, I love, like, on the East Coast, obviously, different kind of history there, but it's so deep rooted in, when you go there, you can feel it. And I feel like every time we tear down one of these hotels or any, property, down in the downtown area, or anything that's got some history to it here in Las Vegas, we lose a piece of our history. And that's something that is so critical moving forward, because we are a city that, like, since the 90s has put in lighter fluid on our growth, and everything is new and shiny. Like, you're going to want to look back at the history element of it. And so that's one of those things where I think this is something where Tony Hsieh's probably sitting back, kind of smiling, like, okay, this is the vision I had for downtown. Do you guys think this is more in the way of, like, what he was hoping would happen down there?
I think he was really, an innovator, and it's particularly in this city, like we were talking about, because it sort of broke that mold of just, let's blow it up, start something new, but let's add something to it. And being a tech person, that's another thing that you do see, for example, in the Bay Area, where tech is so prominent, is, a lot of these structures, they have historical value. And so you have to maintain those structures so that look and that feel is still there. You might have that from the 1940s or 1950s or whatever it is, and inside you're doing this high-tech modern stuff. Well, there's no reason why we can't do that here, so that we add that character to it, and can maintain some of that history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think they specifically sought buyers to carry forward the legacy of
They had a
Hsieh.
vision.
Yeah, and so it is kind of a continuation of what he was trying to do downtown, with the bars, restaurant, Container Park, Ferguson's. Maybe we'll one day see the return of Life is Beautiful, but it does keep the character and the history of downtown. And I remember when I recently went to New Orleans earlier this year, in Magazine Street, which is their boutique, like, shop neighborhood, was my favorite part of that trip, because it was just a whole bunch of random vintage stores and cafes in historical buildings. And so I think that's the vision for downtown that Hsieh had, and hopefully this new property kind of carries that forward.
Yeah, you see it in so many areas. Portland, Nashville come to mind. Austin has a lot of these older hotels that have kind of been revamped, but again, still keeping the bones of it. I'm a big believer in, like, they don't make them like they used to, so, like, the bones of these places are usually always great. It just takes a lot of money to reinvest into them, but these developers have the money, and I think it's on our local leaders to really push to maintain the history and be like, hey, bring it back to its old glory. Don't just tear down and build something anew. But in all of this, this is CityCast. Like, we like to have fun. So we want to have a little fun on the way out of this topic in particular, okay? If you had your own boutique hotel, this one's got a little mini golf setup. What's the wildest thing that you would add? If you could add any attraction to your boutique hotel, what would you throw in there?
I don't know if it's wild, but I would try to have a partnership with the Neon Museum and have, like, kind of a satellite vintage neon sign exhibit at my property, have maybe rotating signs come in through that partnership with the Neon Museum. I don't know if the Neon Museum is going to move downtown like there were rumors of last year, but it would be nice to bring some of that history downtown and maybe have, like, a smaller exhibit in one of these boutique properties. And it would be great for photo ops and just bringing in more tourists to the neighborhood, I think.
Just need really good blackout curtains, that's all. If you're bringing those signs down.
Exactly.
Yvette, what are you throwing in your boutique hotel?
The most interesting thing I think that we have here actually is this whole concept of axe throwing.
This sounds dangerous, but I'm here for it.
which was like, what? We're doing that. But beyond that, I think another cool thing would be to maybe create more events that allow people, in particular visitors, to have that participation where we sort of have this through line, this thread with all the things we were just talking about. So for example, events where you could dress up like in the 1940s, or with the showgirls and with the whatever, all these things from back in the day that connects that nostalgia with today, and the opportunity, of course, to take all those selfies, and then that adds to that the glam part of it, as well as the promoting tourism and everything. So it kind of hits all those buttons, if you will.
I love that.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. The thing that my mind went to was like, we obviously see Ferguson's, downtown and what they've done. And when you walk in, you see the semi truck that's kind of like molded into a slide. And I was like, you know what? Not to copy what Ferguson's has, but like, let's create some wild, crazy slide or water slide type of deal within one of these hotels. I think it'd be crazy, but like a very like drawn out one, not just like one singular one, like have it wrap around to where it's something insane. I don't know. That's where my mind went of like, let's have some just crazy, I don't even know how to describe it, but like length of slides that wraps around through the interior of the hotel. Not in rooms,
I feel like that
though.
would fit the neighborhood. Like there's one at Container Park. The one at Ferguson's isn't a slide, but it would be great if it was.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying, like convert it to a slide. Because like every time I walk in there, I'm always like, God, that'd be a really cool like slide. So like lean into that. Maybe throw a ball pit in there. Isn't there a house in Henderson that some guy turned into like a full-on play area? I think I saw that recently on social media. Yeah, he's got like, the little like ball things in there everywhere. Like, the play pit. Like he converted and spent a ton of money into this and even bought a home next to his home to like expand it even more. Have that guy handle the next boutique hotel.
Wow.
I need to do more research to figure it out. Yeah, but it's crazy. Like it blew up on social recently, and that I think would be so cool. Like lean into like the adult kid type of fun thing in this boutique hotel.
That sounds like fun.
All right, it's time now for our members only bonus segment where we dive into some of our insider tips for anybody looking to move to Las Vegas or who has just recently moved here. We're giving our best advice of what you need to do when you come to Vegas or when you're new to Las Vegas. But you're only going to hear this segment if you become one of our CityCast Las Vegas neighbors by visiting membership.citycast.fm/Las Vegas. So if you want access to this awesome conversation with our insiders, make sure you go and sign up and then come on back to us. All right, Layla, Yvette, this was a fun conversation. Thank you both so much for this today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse.
That's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. Our executive producer is Layla Muhammad. Our creative producer is Jacob Solis. Our newsletter editor is Rob Katzelreese. And I'm your host, Jesse Merrick. Music is by OG Moose, Epidemic Sound, and All the Kimonos. We record this show on the traditional homelands of the Nuuvi, the Southern Paiute people. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend? Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our free morning newsletter as well. And don't forget, you can support this show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Las Vegas neighbor at membership.citycast.fm/Las Vegas. We'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. Until then, though, take care and have a great weekend.